If you're hearing this, it's not because you're curious. It's because something in your life has already run its course. Not a crisis, not a breakdown. Just a quiet knowing that the old way can't follow you any further. This is Aquarius energy. The moment when you don't collapse, you detach. And that's how cycles actually end. You didn't fail. You didn't fall behind. You simply outgrew what once kept you alive. If this already feels familiar, go ahead and comment, "I received this message." Not for belief, but for acknowledgement. Because what ends in 2026 isn't your story. It's the weight you've been carrying, and you're about to feel what comes after letting go. At some point in life, things stop being random. Not suddenly. Not loudly. It happens quietly, almost politely, the way maturity enters a room without announcing itself. You start to notice patterns instead of surprises. You recognize the timing. You sense when something is arriving, not to excite you, but to confirm what you already know. That's where you are now. And I'm not saying this to inspire you. You've heard enough inspiration to last a lifetime. You've listened to voices telling you to push harder, think brighter, stay positive, keep believing. You tried that, you really did. What you're feeling now isn't doubt, it's discernment. Aquarius reaches this point differently than others. Not through collapse, not through drama, but through awareness that sharpens with age. You've lived long enough to see how certain doors never fully closed. How the same lessons kept reappearing under different names. How delays weren't punishments, they were pauses you didn't yet understand. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and started asking something quieter, more dangerous. What am I being asked to see? That's when randomness ends. Not because life becomes predictable, but because you become present. You don't chase signs anymore. You notice resonance. You don't need proof. Your nervous system already knows when something is real. That's the part of you that brought you here. Not curiosity. Recognition. You're not unconscious anymore. You're just tired of pretending you are. And here's the thing most people won't tell you. Awakening doesn't always feel like clarity. Sometimes it feels like losing interest in explanations that once kept you going. You don't want hype. You don't want promises. You don't even want certainty. You want honesty. The kind that doesn't rush you forward or shame you for slowing down. Aquarius energy matures when it stops reacting and starts observing its own life with compassion. You've been watching yourself for a while now, haven't you? Watching how you no longer argue with what is. Watching how some battles quietly dissolved when you stopped feeding them. Watching how the need to prove yourself faded before the answers arrived. That's not giving up. That's intelligence. So let me ask you something gently. No pressure. No urgency. When was the last time you felt surprised by your own growth? Not impressed. Not proud. Just quietly aware that you are no longer the person who needed certain struggles to feel alive. This is the threshold Aquarius crosses when a cycle prepares to close. Not with fireworks, but with understanding. You don't need to do anything right now. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to move ahead. Just stay here for a moment, with this awareness, with this calm. Because once randomness ends, life doesn't rush you into the next chapter. It waits for you to notice that you're already standing at the edge of something different. And what comes next isn't about becoming someone new. It's about discovering who you are when nothing needs to be forced anymore. There is a kind of tiredness that doesn't come from chaos. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't break things. It doesn't even ask for attention. It just settles in quietly. You still wake up. You still go to work. You still show up for the people who rely on you. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. But inside, something has gone very still. Not empty, just worn thin. This is the exhaustion no one asks you about. Because you never complained. You never made it dramatic. You learned how to carry it with grace. Aquarius does that well. Too well sometimes. You learned early how to be strong without being loud. How to stay functional without being seen. How to keep going even when the joy stopped keeping pace. And so you kept moving. Responsibility after responsibility. Deadline after deadline. Family, work, commitments, expectations, all of it handled, all of it survived, but somewhere along the way, the part of you that used to imagine the future started conserving energy, not giving up, just rationing hope. You didn't lose your dreams, they're still there. You just stopped feeding them every day. Because feeding them required belief. And belief, when stretched too long, becomes heavy. This kind of tiredness doesn't come from failure. It comes from endurance, from being the one who holds it together, from being dependable. From being the calm one while everyone else falls apart. And no one ever teaches you what to do when strength becomes a habit instead of a choice. There's a moment many people never admit out loud. The moment you realize you didn't break, you just stopped expecting. Not in a bitter way, not in a dramatic way, More like a quiet agreement with reality. You adjusted your expectations so life wouldn't keep hurting you. That was survival, and it worked. But Aquarius energy eventually asks a deeper question. How long do you want to live in survival mode when nothing is actively attacking you anymore? Because this exhaustion is not asking you to push harder. It's asking you to listen differently. Your body already has. Your nervous system already has. That soft numbness you feel sometimes is not weakness. It's information. It's telling you that you've been strong long enough to finally consider rest without guilt. And rest doesn't mean stopping your life. It means stopping the internal pressure to be endlessly resilient. Let me ask you something gently. If you didn't have to prove anything anymore, who would you allow yourself to be tired with? Not collapse, not quit. Just be honest. Because naming this exhaustion doesn't make you fragile. It makes you precise. You are not losing momentum. You are recalibrating. And when an Aquarius recalibrates, it's never random. It's the beginning of a quieter alignment. One that doesn't demand effort to be real. Stay with me here. Not because you need answers, but because this tiredness is not the end of you. It's the place where something gentler is about to take over. There comes a moment when exhaustion softens into curiosity. Not the kind that looks for answers online. The kind that quietly wonders why some things stayed longer than they should have. You're not angry about it anymore. You're not desperate to escape. You're just thinking. Aquarius does that. When the emotion settles, the mind opens. You start to see that certain chapters didn't refuse to close out of cruelty, but out of insistence. Not fate, not punishment, not some cosmic test gone wrong. Just repetition with purpose. Some cycles don't end when we want them to because the lesson keeps changing its costume. You recognize the pattern now. Different job, same tension. Different relationship, same conversation beneath it. Different city, same feeling waiting for you at night. It wasn't bad luck. It was familiarity you hadn't named yet. You tried to leave quickly once, maybe more than once. You told yourself a fresh environment would reset everything. New routines, new faces, new beginnings. And for a while it worked. It always does. But then slowly, the echo returned. Not as loudly, not as painfully, just enough for you to notice. That's when maturity steps in. You stop asking, why is this following me? And start asking, what keeps asking for my attention? Aquarius energy doesn't dramatize this realization. It observes it. You begin to understand that cycles are not cages. They're classrooms without schedules. They don't end when you get tired. They end when you stop repeating the same response. And that takes time, experience, a certain kind of wear. This is where people often get it wrong. They think staying longer means failing. It doesn't. Sometimes staying means you were strong enough to sit with complexity instead of running from it. Sometimes a cycle extends because you are learning nuance, not survival. Because you're no longer here to fight the lesson. You're here to integrate it. And integration doesn't hurry. Let me ask you something gently. If this cycle had ended earlier, would you actually be who you are now? Not wiser, not calmer, but more honest with yourself. Aquarius grows through perspective, through distance that allows truth to land without fear. That's why you don't blame the universe. You don't curse timing. You don't call yourself unlucky. You know better now. You see that what followed you was never there to trap you. It was there to mature you. And here's the quiet shift that happens next. The moment you stop trying to end the cycle and start listening to what it's already taught you, that's when things begin to loosen. Not dramatically, not overnight, but subtly, like a knot realizing it doesn't need to stay tight anymore. You don't need to fix the past. You don't need to rewrite the story. You just need to recognize that the cycle didn't stay because you were weak. It stayed because you were capable. Capable of learning something deeper than relief. Stay with this thought for a moment. Because when an Aquarius finally understands why something lasted so long, the ending doesn't feel like loss. It feels like completion. And completion has a way of opening doors that force never could. There is a moment that doesn't look like an ending at all. No tears. No confrontation. No long explanations in your head before going to sleep. It arrives quietly the way clarity does when it's no longer trying to convince anyone. You wake up one day and realize you are not holding the rope as tightly anymore. Not because you gave up. Not because you stopped caring. But because something inside you finally understood that effort and attachment are not the same thing. This is Aquarius energy at its most mature. Detachment doesn't happen through collapse, it happens through awareness. You stop proving. Not because you won, but because you no longer need the argument. You stop explaining. Not because you were misunderstood, but because clarity doesn't require defense. You stop waiting for outcomes to validate your choices. Because your body already knows when something is aligned. Nothing dramatic happened. No final conversation. No big decision announced to the world. You just stopped carrying what wasn't yours. The emotional weight that didn't belong to you slowly slipped off your shoulders. The expectations you inherited from others returned to where they came from. And the most surprising part was how natural it felt. Aquarius doesn't detach by disappearing. You stay present. You still care. But you stop gripping the future with anxiety. You stop trying to manage everyone's reaction. You stop negotiating with what already showed you its limits. This is not avoidance. This is discernment. There is a difference between running away and standing still long enough to see what no longer needs your energy. You didn't deny what happened. You didn't rewrite the story to make yourself look better. You simply placed the experience where it belongs. In the past, complete, and in that space where effort used to live, something softer begins to breathe. Your thoughts slow down. Your chest loosens. The background tension you thought was normal starts to fade. You realize how much strength was being spent on holding things together that were never meant to be held. Let me ask you something quietly. When was the last time you felt peace without having to earn it? Aquarius learns this lesson later in life because you are built to endure, to observe, to adapt. But detachment is not endurance. It is permission. Permission to stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. Permission to stop solving problems that were never assigned to you. Permission to let others carry their own weight. This kind of release does not make you distant. It makes you available. Available for clarity, for presence, for choices that come from truth instead of pressure. You are not closing your heart. You are clearing space inside it. And that space matters, because it is where the next chapter will land without force. Stay here for a moment. Feel how different this is from the exhaustion you once carried. From the cycles you tried to escape. This is not escape. This is alignment. And once an Aquarius aligns, life does not need to be pushed forward. It begins to respond, gently, precisely, in ways that only make sense after you have finally let go. After you let go, nothing explodes. There is no sudden breakthrough, no dramatic shift you can point to and say, this is it. What happens instead is almost easy to miss. Your body notices first. You start sleeping a little deeper, not longer, just heavier, as if your nervous system finally trusts the night again. Your breath moves lower in your chest, not because you tried to relax, but because there is less to brace against. You don't wake up thinking something is wrong, and that alone feels unfamiliar. This is how endings often arrive for Aquarius, not with celebration, but with relief. The invisible weight you carried for so long doesn't fall off all at once. It loosens, like taking off a backpack you forgot you were wearing because you put it on years ago. At first, your shoulders feel strange without it, almost exposed, almost unsure, then lighter. You realize how much of your energy was being spent compensating, holding yourself together, staying alert, preparing for something that never actually happened. And now, your body doesn't need to do that anymore. This isn't magic. It's physiology catching up with truth. When a cycle ends, the mind understands last. The body understands immediately. It stops signaling danger. It stops tightening without permission. It stops whispering that something needs to be fixed. You may notice small things. Food tastes more real. Silence feels less heavy. You don't flinch as quickly when your phone lights up. Nothing monumental, just real. Aquarius often underestimates the intelligence of the body because you live so comfortably in the mind. But the body keeps score, and it knows when the burden is no longer necessary. Let me ask you something softly. What would your days feel like if you didn't have to stay slightly guarded all the time? Not optimistic, not fearless, just unarmored. This is where healing becomes practical, not a belief system, an experience. You didn't manifest relief. You allowed alignment. And alignment doesn't announce itself, it settles in. You might even catch yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop, that old reflex, that quiet vigilance. But it doesn't, because the weight that left was never meant to be permanent. It stayed only as long as it served a purpose. Now, it's done, and here's the part no one prepares you for. When the weight leaves, you're left with space. Space can feel unsettling at first. It asks questions, it invites choices, it doesn't rush you, but it does ask for honesty. What do you do when your life no longer feels like something you have to survive? Aquarius answers this slowly, with curiosity, with care. You don't fill the space right away. You sit with it. You listen, because this lightness is not the destination, it's the doorway. And beyond it, there is a version of you who moves through the world without carrying what was never yours to begin with. Stay here a moment longer. Let your body keep adjusting. What's coming next will meet you more gently than you expect. There's something important you need to hear now, and I want you to hear it slowly. What is ending in 2026 is not you. It's not your relevance. It's not your potential. It's not your chance. It's the way you learn to survive. For a long time, endurance was your language. You adapted. You stayed functional. You figured things out even when there were no instructions. That wasn't weakness. That was intelligence responding to pressure. But somewhere along the way, endurance became your identity. You learned how to carry weight without asking for relief, how to tolerate uncertainty without complaint, how to stay composed even when the cost was quiet self-abandonment. And because you did it so well, you started to wonder something dangerous. Is this all I am now? Aquarius often reaches this question later in life. Not because you were asleep, but because you were busy holding things together. You weren't lost. You were occupied. There is a difference. You didn't miss your moment. You were preparing without knowing it. What ends now is not your path. It's the version of you that believed growth had to hurt to count. The version of you that stayed longer than necessary because leaving felt irresponsible. The version of you that thought maturity meant carrying everything alone. I remember the first time I realized this for myself. Nothing dramatic happened. No breakdown. No bold declaration. Just a quiet sentence that landed one night and refused to leave. I outgrew the version of me that only knew how to endure. That sentence didn't judge the past. It honored it. Because endurance saved you once. It kept you moving when stopping wasn't an option. But it was never meant to be permanent. Aquarius evolves through redefinition. You are not here to repeat what you already mastered. And here is where many people your age feel afraid. They think letting go of survival means losing time. They think softness means delay. They think ease means settling. It doesn't. It means your nervous system no longer needs to prove resilience. You are not behind. You are right on time for a different way of living. Let me ask you something honestly. If your life no longer required you to struggle for legitimacy, what would you allow yourself to want? Not what sounds impressive, not what feels responsible, what feels true. Aquarius is not afraid of change. You're afraid of change without meaning, and now, meaning is catching up. The part of you that endured is being thanked, not erased, not dismissed, released. So you can become something else, something quieter, more precise, more aligned with who you are now, not who you had to be then. This isn't an ending marked by loss. It's marked by relief. Because when survival steps aside, something wiser takes its place. Presence, choice, clarity. Stay with this realization. You are not too late. You are not worn out. You are simply done living in a way that required you to disappear to keep going. And what comes next will not ask you to endure. It will ask you to arrive. After something ends, nothing rushes in to replace it. And that can feel unsettling at first. You might expect movement, a sign, a clear next step. Instead, there is quiet, not the heavy quiet you once knew, not the kind filled with worry or waiting. This one is different. It doesn't press on your chest. It doesn't demand an answer. It simply stays. Aquarius often misunderstands this moment. You are wired to think ahead, to imagine futures, to anticipate outcomes. So when nothing immediately arrives, the mind looks for meaning. Did I miss something, or is this how it's supposed to feel? This is where many people panic. They think the ending didn't work. They think they did something wrong. But this space is not failure. It is a pause, a rare one. The kind that teaches you who you are when no one is asking anything of you. There is no pressure here. No expectation to improve. No urgency to define the next chapter. Just room. Room to notice what your days feel like without resistance. Room to see how your energy moves when it isn't being pulled in 10 directions. Room to discover that silence doesn't mean emptiness. It means capacity. You might find yourself slower now, not unmotivated, just unhurried. You respond instead of react. You listen longer before deciding. You don't fill every gap with noise. This can feel unfamiliar if your life has always been about momentum. But Aquarius grows in these spaces, not in the rush, in the stillness between movements. Let me ask you something gently. Who are you when no one is measuring your progress, not judging it, not praising it, just noticing? This pause is not a waiting room. It's not holding you back. It's recalibrating your sense of direction, so that when something does enter your life again, it won't arrive through force. It will arrive through fit. You don't need to prepare for it. You don't need to attract it. You only need to stay present in this quiet without trying to escape it. That is harder than it sounds. Because silence brings clarity, and clarity removes excuses. It shows you what you actually want now, not what you used to chase, not what made sense years ago. This pause allows your nervous system to learn a new rhythm. One where urgency is not mistaken for importance. One where rest is not mistaken for stagnation. And slowly, without announcement, you begin to trust this space. You stop scanning the horizon. You stop bracing for impact. You let yourself be here. That is when the next chapter knows where to find you. Not because you were searching, but because you were available. Stay with this stillness. It is not asking you to decide anything. It is asking you to notice. Notice how calm can exist without excitement. Notice how peace doesn't need a reason. This is not the moment where life begins again. This is the moment where you meet yourself without pressure. And from that meeting, something honest will eventually move forward. Not rushed, not forced, but ready. If you're still listening, there's something I trust about you. You didn't stay for reassurance. You didn't stay for answers. You stayed because something in you recognized the pace. This wasn't meant to rush you forward. It was meant to meet you where you already are. And where you are now is not a place of becoming. It's a place of arriving. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You don't need a new identity. You don't need to erase what you've lived. Nothing here is asking you to start over. What's being asked of you is much quieter than that. To stop carrying what no longer belongs to this version of you. That's it. Not to reject the past. Not to criticize who you were, but to recognize that some tools were only meant for certain seasons. You've already learned what they were meant to teach you. Aquarius understands this in a way few signs do. You don't cling to form, you cling to meaning. And when the meaning is complete, the attachment dissolves on its own. You may notice how calm this realization feels. Not euphoric, not emotional, just clear. There's no urgency in it, no pressure to act. No list of next steps forming in your mind. That's how you know it's real. Because truth doesn't push, it settles. Let me ask you something softly, as a friend who trusts your intelligence. What would change in your life if you no longer had to prove you've grown? Not to others, not even to yourself. What if growth was already evident in how gently you now move through the world? In how little you need to explain? In how rarely you feel pulled into things that drain you? You're not waiting for permission anymore. And you're not chasing clarity, you're inhabiting it. This is why nothing dramatic is needed at the end of a cycle. No announcement, no final scene. Just a quiet release that frees your hands for something else. And whatever comes next will not ask you to abandon yourself to receive it. It will meet you as you are now. Grounded. Present, unburdened. You don't need to remember every lesson. They're already integrated. You don't need to hold on to the story. The story knows how to close itself. All you need to do is allow this calm to be enough. Because a cycle doesn't end loudly. It ends when you no longer need it. And if you're still listening, then you already know. You're ready. Not for more effort. Not for more endurance. But for a life that doesn't require you to carry the past forward just to justify the future. Stay with that feeling. It will guide you more accurately than any plan ever could. As we come to the end of this moment together, I want you to notice something. Nothing dramatic just happened. No big promise was made. No future was forced into shape. And yet you feel different. Clearer. More grounded in yourself than you were before you pressed play. That's Aquarius healing. It doesn't overwhelm you. It reminds you of what you already know. You didn't listen to change who you are. You listened to remember who you've always been beneath the weight, the pressure, the waiting. And if any part of this journey felt familiar, if something inside you softened or settled, that's not coincidence. That's resonance. So let me invite you to do one small thing. Not for the algorithm, for yourself. If you felt seen here, leave a comment with a single word. Something simple. Something true. I'm here. I'm ready. I trust myself. Whatever feels right. And if this space feels safe to you, if this pace feels like something you want more of, consider subscribing. Not because you need more messages, but because this is a place where you don't have to rush your growth. This channel is for Aquarius souls who have lived enough to value depth, who don't need noise to feel alive, and who understand that awakening can be gentle. Before we part, I want to say this clearly. Trust yourself. The clarity you felt tonight didn't come from me. It came from you being ready to hear it. And this journey isn't ending here. It's only pausing long enough for the next message to arrive when the timing is right. Stay open. Stay grounded. Stay kind to the version of you that carried so much. The next chapter won't ask you to struggle. It will recognize you. Until then, take this calm with you. The journey continues, and the next message is already on its way.